Hello my friends, welcome to a middle grade recommendations video. I try to do one of these each year, generally in February in preparation for middle grade March. I enjoy partaking in middle grade March. I will admit that I have been reading less middle grade in the last few years. As my kids have gotten older, I feel like I'm proofreading less middle grade for them. And to be honest, I've kind of just gotten out of the habit of it. But I plan with my TBR, which will be my next video, will be my March TBR. I plan on adding a bunch of middle grade to my TBR for March. So if you're interested, that will be coming. Today, what I wanted to do, some years when I share this middle grade recommendations video, I share like my favorite middle grade that I read in the last year. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sharing I think there's 12 books on here, but they're middle grade books that adults love. So I have found that some middle grade books are really written for middle graders, and it's kind of only middle graders that love it. The ones that I have here today, I can confidently say, I'm looking at the stack here, not only do middle grade kids love these books, but so do I as an adult. So these kind of, I think almost every single one of them has some pretty hard-hitting themes. That's kind of the thing that they all have in common. I've got some historical fiction, some contemporary, some fantasy. I think that's kind of all for the genres, but the underlying thing that they all have in common is that they are pretty heavy, but end really well, and therefore I want to recommend them to you guys. If you have some middle grade recommendations, please let me know. I'm also really tempted to do a middle grade fantasy recommendations video, because as I was looking through my middle grade shelves, I was like, oh, I have a lot of middle grade fantasy I really like as well, but most of it doesn't fit into this like hard-hitting criteria that I've created for this video. So if you'd be interested in middle grade fantasy books, let me know. I could do a video on that in the future, but now let's get into this. It's always the question of like where to start. You know what? Let's start with let's go for one of my favorite themes, and let's start with some foster care themes. Because we have been foster parents for over 6 years now. Wow, is it that long? Yikes. Yeah, foster care is very near and dear to my heart. It is a hard thing in general. So writing a book about it can be very difficult. And then writing that book and having it feel real is also very difficult. But I have three that are like heavy on foster care, one that's not quite really about that. So let's just start here. My first one is One for the Murphys by Linda Mullally Hunt. I'm just realizing I've never, I don't know if that's her middle name or if that's like a second last name. I've never actually read it. Let's go with Linda Hunt, much easier. In this one we have, what's her name? Carly Connors. So she has recently been taken away from her mother. She is 12 and she's going to live with the Murphys. And when I was reading this book, I could see the trauma that Carly was dealing with. She was really struggling. It's hard to go from a situation with, you know, your birth parent that you've always known, even if it's a difficult situation, to living with a different family. The foster mother in this book, she did make me feel a little lesser than. I feel like she was really good, and she just kind of always seemed to know what to say. It was inspiring. It did make me feel like, oh man, I need to try a little harder. And then of course when things have like start going well, then what was her name again? Carly. Yeah, Carly's mom is back in the picture. Foster care is such a traumatic experience for all involved, especially kids who are constantly back and forth, as ours have been. I feel like this book does it well. It shows this brief season in Carly's life really well. So definitely recommend that. Another one we've got, I think, character from at the same age. Yeah, she's 12. We've got pictures of Hollis Woods, and Hollis is our main character. She has been in a bunch of foster homes. Her previous one was really good, but something happened there. And so now she is going into this home with this older woman named Josie. Now, Hollis and Josie kind of quickly realize that Josie is, I don't know, getting Alzheimer's or dementia. She's forgetting things. But Josie's a really good place for Hollis to be. So they're trying to cover it up so that the social worker doesn't know, because they just feel like that's where Hollis should be. But as the, oops, I got books falling over. But as the book goes, we get flashbacks to Hollis's previous placement. Something happened there, and that's slowly revealed throughout the book. This is by Patricia Riley Giff. I've read a couple of her other books, and in my opinion, none of them have come close to being as good as this one. I should try some more of hers again, but definitely loved this. This is one of my all-time favorite middle grade books. Now this next one, I think it was the first foster care book I probably read, and this one has some severe trauma to it. Actually, the main characters are adopted in this book. It's called Forever or a Long, Long Time by Kayla Carter, and we follow characters who are, how old are they? I want to say like 7 and 5, maybe even a little older. I can't remember how old they are. The oldest one is in 4th grade. And in this book, they are adopted, and we know that there's some kind of trauma. I mean, it happens just from moving from home to home. I don't know if it's necessarily dramatic trauma, if that makes sense. Like there was something bad that happened. But in this book, we kind of go with them as they try to remember their previous foster homes and what all happened there. And the kids are so traumatized. I don't know, I keep using that same word, but it's so true. And they reminded me so much of our first foster care placement, which was, it was a 3 and 1.5-year-old boy, but they had been through so much. They seemed so much older. They were also like tall and like just looked older. And yeah, oh man, the trauma that they had. Reading this book, it was bringing me back to that for sure. I don't hear anyone ever talking about this book, and I think more people need to read it. Although I would be a little hesitant to put this in the hands of just any middle grader. I would highly recommend reading it first, because there's a lot in here, but I think it's done well. Okay, this next one, our main character, actually, she comes from juvie, is that right? Or maybe she was just in a foster care group home. I can't remember where she was coming from. It's called Greetings from Witness Protection by Jake Burt. So we have this girl whose name is Nikki, kind of. At the beginning of the book, she is taken out of her current situation, which, yes, I can't remember if it was juvie or if it was a group home, but she is 12 to 13 years old-ish, and she is going to help this family who's going in witness protection because they're trying this new program where they try to add a kid to the family to make it look less obvious. So it's 2 parents and a son. And, you know, if you just uproot those people and put them somewhere else, it's a little more obvious than 2 parents and all of a sudden 2 kids. That can throw off the people that are looking for them. So is her name Charlotte, or does her name become Charlotte? Yes, I think her name becomes Charlotte. That's why it's very confusing, because she changes her name at the beginning of the book. So we've got this girl that's trying to get to know this family. It's almost like a foster care situation in the fact that she's getting thrown into this new family. But everyone's got new names, living a new life. And it was all just very interesting. Plus, I like the witness protection idea for a story. I wouldn't like to live it in real life. I mentioned a different witness protection book in my romance as a subplot video, and like they have similar vibes because of that. but also very different. Okay, next we've just got some, this one is just contemporary. We've got Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus by Dusty Bowling. And I will say this one is also excellent on audio. We listened to this one and the second one on audio. So we follow Avon Green. She was born with no arms, but because people often mention to her that she has no arms, she's made up all these stories of how she lost her arms, like they got eaten by a crocodile or stuff like that. She has a sense of humor. So at the beginning of this book, her family has just moved to Arizona. Her parents are taking over, I think it's called Stagecoach Pass, a rundown Western theme park in Arizona. So she's moving, she's going to a new school. Now she has to, you know, explain to everyone again the fact that why she has no arms. She ends up meeting a boy who becomes her best friend, and he has Tourette's. And so there's this really deep theme throughout here as we like follow Avon, and we get explained how she does things without arms. And then also her friend with Tourette's. Like, we learned a lot about both of these things as a family, but there's such good humor. Like, Avon is feisty, and I really appreciate that. I definitely recommend reading it. We laughed out loud listening to it. Went on to the second one. Not quite as good as the first, but definitely also worth reading. I need to read more by Dusty Bowling because I really enjoyed this. I forgot to grab one off my shelf, you guys. I'm gonna throw in a like extra recommendation in here because it has to do with foster care. It's contemporary, and my daughter wrote it when she was 12, which was years ago. She doesn't really she is in the middle of writing other books. She's gonna be writing very different books. She's proud of what she wrote, but it's like, she wrote it when she was 12. It's a Lone Wolf. And in this story, we follow a kid in foster care, goes into a new home, which is, it's interesting to read a book like this written by your child who has children, random children coming into their home. So we follow this boy named Hugo. It's a short little book. How many pages is it? It's 77 pages. A very, very quick read. But yeah, if you want to support a young writer, get a little bit of a inside the head of a kid that has had foster kids in their home for years. I would love it if you would support my daughter that way. Okay, let's do some historical. This one is historical with a touch of fantasy. We've got Sweep, the story of a girl and her monster. And this is the story of a Victorian, chimney sweep. This girl named Nan works for this man as a chimney sweep. And this monster, she has this like special friend made out of coal, is like the fantastical element of the story. I learned so much about chimney sweeps during the Victorian era in here, and I've read it multiple times, once even with my family. Cried every time I've read it. Surprisingly, a lot of people love Jonathan Auxier, and this is the only one of his books that I've been able to get into. His other ones have just been a little too weird for me, but I really enjoyed this one and would highly recommend it. Then we've got one that I've also reread multiple times. It is A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Elbis. I just reread this one at Christmas time again. I couldn't not. It has so many great quotes. Oh, that would be a spoiler if I read that one. We follow 3 children who flee London during World War II, flee for the bombing, and they have also recently, their grandmother has died and now they are completely orphaned. And their lawyer tells them, your grandma left you a lot of money, but you don't have a family. Why don't you go to the countryside, bill it with a family, see if they can be your forever family. And that's what they do. And that is not what they find to begin with. Oh, this is just a lovely description. After they go through many hard times, the name Snug was fitting. 2 chairs and a sofa, a faded ottoman bearing a knitted blanket, a glowing fireplace. Aside from these, it was all the books. Shelves lined every available bit of wall, and more books made themselves comfortable on the floor, stacked on side tables, lined up between bookends on the mantel. What could have felt untidy felt instead, as person's name had said, friendly. I didn't want to give spoilers, but there's a lot of talk of books in here because all three kids love books. They end up finding the town library and spend a lot of time there. There's also lots of mentions of hot cocoa and just coziness. They go through some hard times, but it's so worth it to see them find a good place in the end. Then we've got The Lost Year by Catherine Marsh. This is a multi-POV story following cousins in the Soviet Ukraine in the 30s. So they were having their big famine, and we follow a couple of cousins. 2 in Ukraine, 1 in New York, Brooklyn, New York. Yeah. And then we follow a boy in 2020 in New Jersey. Also, audio is excellent. My kids, when we read this, or listened to it, they were saddened by the events that were talked about in Ukraine. And then the 2020 events had them laughing out loud, and it was just like an emotional roller coaster in all the best ways. So we have some cousins in Ukraine that are not doing well. One is trying to hide another one. They're trying to get to the States to flee Ukraine. And in 2020, Matthew lives with his grandmother and mother, and he's struggling with COVID because this is, I think, right at the beginning when he's not allowed to go out much, especially because his grandmother is older. They don't want her getting sick. And he's just struggling with that. So good on so many levels. Okay, here's a fantasy that is quite different than all of these books, but I still feel like it should be on this list. It's The False Prince by Jennifer A. Nielsen. In this book, we follow a boy named Sage. Him and a couple of boys are singled out because they look like the young prince that disappeared or died years and years before, and this guy is training them to be the prince because he wants whoever's better, one of them, to pretend to be the true prince. And so we follow them as they start training for it. And our main character, Sage, he is a little bit lippy. He doesn't always do what he's told. He's one of those characters that's hilarious to read about, but would be really annoying in real life, like if you had to actually deal with him. This is like a 4 or 5 book series now. It started out as a trilogy and then it just kept going. I never finished the series. I really loved book 1. And then, I don't know, I just feel like book 1 was really like the best. So I think I read book 2 and part of book 3, and it just fizzled for me, but highly recommend book 1. Of course, I could not get away without mentioning both The Wednesday Wars and Okay for Now by Gary D. Schmidt. These are excellent books. They are set Vietnam War times. In book 1, The Wednesday Wars, we follow Howling Hood as he is in 7th grade. His teacher, he decides, probably hates him. He's the one child that is not Jewish or something else. On one afternoon of the week, half his class goes to Hebrew school, I think, and the other half goes to some other religious thing, and he's the one kid that is neither religion. So because of that, his teacher has to find something for him to do, and she decides he's going to learn Shakespeare. And he ends up being involved in a play, and audio is fantastic. It's one of those books that makes you laugh, it makes you cry, so good. And then definitely continue on with the second book, which is Okay for Now, where we follow, I think it's like the summer after 7th grade maybe. We are following the brother to the bully from The Wednesday Wars, if I'm remembering correctly, how that works. And it's the summer. Our main character ends up going to the library and coming across the Audubon book, Bird Book of America. Gary D. Schmidt just does such a good job with like these hard-hitting themes while having some great humor. Like the theme of this video, pretty much every one of his books would fit under here. Now, so Wednesday Wars and Okay for Now are companion novels. You don't necessarily have to read them in order. I would definitely say do so because you'll feel a little too sympathetic for the bully if you read Okay for Now first. And then 10 years after he wrote Okay for Now, he wrote another companion novel called Just Like That. And at the beginning of that book, we find out that Howling Hood Hood died in a car accident a couple months before. And I'm just like, no, you can't kill Howling. So Reika and I both pretend that book does not exist. You can read it if you want, but it just breaks my heart. And it wasn't written as well as the others, but he has a bunch of other books that are also great. Orbiting Jupiter, and then Jupiter Rising that follows after that. He's got The Labors of Hercules Beale. He's got a lot of books, but I'm officially doing the Wednesday Wars and Okay for Now in here, and I'll just stop there. Okay, now I've lost track of how many books that was, but I hope that gives you some great middle grade recommendations. I know there are some prompts for middle grade March this year. Did I pay any attention to whether or not these actually check any boxes? I think historical fiction was one, so there was some of those. One of them was a name in the title, and we've got one for the Murphys, and we've got pictures of Hollis Woods, so that would count. The other one was Black, Indigenous, or person of color. That I don't know. I don't know the race of all of these authors, to be honest. And then was there something else? I don't remember. But hopefully you read at least one of these. I would love it if you did. If you do, let me know which one sounded the most interesting. And then if you have some hard-hitting middle grade books that you would recommend, leave them in the comments. Yeah, they're definitely my favorite types of middle grade. And then also, if you want a middle grade fantasy recommendations video, I don't think I've ever done one. I don't think so. And I would have quite a long list. So let me know if you'd like to see that. And I hope you have a great time reading some middle grade books in March.